So I've been on hiatus, mostly because my habits have been relapsing, but also for a few other reasons. Or rather, I wouldn't say reasons, it's more so just a series of events, and I ended up breaking the habit of recording these videos. Now, of course, I still think it is important to improve my ability to communicate my thoughts and also to condense them, which is why I am back to it. I still think it's valuable. I don't know if I'll be able to do it daily, but today I was reading a section of How We Decide, and I saw a very interesting section, in which case I didn't even take notes on it, I just took screenshots of the pages. So I'm gonna read you this section. So basically what happened is there's a disease, Parkinson's, in which, as the book describes, there's an issue with the dopamine circuits. There's a section of the brain where the dopamine neurons are just dying. And so they prescribe, it makes them very dysfunctional. In fact, in an earlier part of the book, they talk about the usefulness of feelings when it comes to making decisions, and that all decisions are driven by feelings. So even if you feel that it's rational, there's still a part of you where your brain goes, yes, this is the one to go with. And when you have like these debates, a lot of the time it's the reason you even have debates isn't necessarily because it's rational, but because you have an emotional attachment to the pros of one option and the pros of another, or maybe you have negative feelings with the cons. So when you look at pros and cons, those pros and cons are also attached to some feeling. Even if it doesn't feel explicit or strong, it's a subconscious feeling. For example, if you see someone get scammed, and then there's going to be little parts of their actions that maybe it's the way a bit of their body posture that you don't think of explicitly, but you subconsciously, when you see it, you now in the future you get a bit of scammy vibes. And so that is a subconscious trigger based on an observation you make, that you don't realize that observation is linked to scammy behavior in your head, but you subconsciously connected that behavior to scammy behavior. So when you feel that something is kind of suspicious but you don't know why, or maybe you think that something is beneficial or you don't know why, or like some of these things where you just kind of feel a certain way about something without knowing why, that's because there's a signal there that your subconscious connected. Another example is when they mentioned someone who watches a lot of sports. I think it was baseball or tennis or something, where basically there was this guy who could watch and he knew exactly, maybe it was this particular, I can't remember, let's just use tennis. It wasn't tennis, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically the guy could always predict when the guy would miss a serve, for example, or mess up his serve. And he knew it as soon as they threw the ball, and they couldn't tell why. The scientists looked at all of the different times that the guy said yes or no, and he was always right, but they couldn't find why until like tons of studies, and eventually they figured out it was like this super subtle motion, and his brain picked up on that. So the point is that somewhere he noticed that feeling, not explicitly, but that connection of that action with an emotional response and knowledge that it's going to fail. So basically the autonomous parts of him notices, triggers the feeling, whether positive or negative, converts that to that feeling is converted to his knowledge of what's going to happen the prediction in terms of the rational brain. So observation, emotion, and then the translation of that emotion is the prediction of the future. But there were these people who had issues with a certain part of their brain, and they had to remove that part of their brain, and it removes their emotion. Basically, it makes them almost emotionless or something like that, but basically it removes the emotional responses to certain things, and they couldn't make decisions because you have this, you look at the different options, you make observations, and you don't have that emotional response between seeing something and making a decision based on what's going to happen, because you don't have the ability to predict basically if you like the result now, because you don't have that emotional touch. And so the other thing is here, let me pull up the note, which, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so the other one is they had a study where they had a set of cards where basically one set of cards had like, it was like plus $100, like from 0 to plus $100, and another set of cards like, and on average it was like $10 or something. And there was another set of cards where it was like $10 to $30 on average, and on average it was $20. And if you keep pulling from this side of the card, this side of the deck, you would on average win more. And on this side, or maybe it was like minus $50 to $100 or minus $30 to $100 or something. But basically, with the emotional brain, when you draw from this deck, after maybe 10 card pulls, they preferred this deck, which is on average better. And without the emotions, the people kept picking, and they couldn't figure out, and they asked them, which deck do you think is better? And they just couldn't answer because they didn't have the emotional pain of losing. So losing didn't hurt. So they couldn't learn. And whereas the people with emotions, every single time they fail, they start to have this aversion to this deck and then none to this deck. So when you remove the emotional sting of losing, the brain loses the ability to learn. It doesn't figure out how to win. Okay. So back to Parkinson's. So these people who had Parkinson's disease, and they had issues with the dopamine circuit neurons, which are dying, and then they take these dopamine supplements basically, so that they could still have dopamine, so that they could still make decisions, right? But what they observed was that these people who took these dopamine drugs or whatever, they had they had a 13% of these people developed an uncontrollable addiction to gambling, where they had no history of gambling before, and then when they were off the drug, they were no longer addicted, which shows how powerful the emotional brain is, right? So here I'm gonna read you the excerpt from the book. Let me see. So, whilst most of these people obsess over slot machines, others get hooked on internet poker or blackjack. They squander everything they have on odds that are stacked against them. Why does an excess of dopamine in a few neurons make games of chance so irresistible? The answer reveals a serious flaw in the human brain, which casinos have learned to exploit. Think how a slot machine works. You put in a coin and pull the lever. The reels start to whir. Pictures of cherries and diamonds and figure sevens fly by. Eventually, the machine settles on its verdict. Since slot machines are programmed to return only about 90% of wagered money over the long term, chances are you lost money. Now think about the slot machine from the perspectives of your dopamine neurons. The purpose of these cells is to predict future events. They always want to know what occurrences, a loud tone, a flashing light, and so forth, will precede the arrival of the juice, or the reward. While you're playing the slots, putting quarter after quarter into the one-armed bandit, your neurons are struggling to decipher the patterns inside the machine. They want to understand the game, to code the logic of luck, to find the circumstances that predict a payout. So far, you're acting just like a monkey trying to predict when his squirt of juice is going to arrive. But here's the catch. While dopamine neurons get excited by predictable rewards, they increase their firing when the juice arrives after the loud tone that heralded it. they get even more excited by surprising squirts of juice when you didn't expect it. According to Wolfram Schultz, such unpredictable rewards are typically 3 to 4 times more exciting, at least for dopamine neurons, than rewards that can be predicted in advance. So if you know that something, you get bored of rewards that are scheduled and always follow an action you take. So it stops firing dopamine, basically. So if you do the same thing over and over again, it stops being rewarding. The purpose of this dopamine surge is to make the brain pay attention to new and potentially important stimuli. Sometimes this cellular response can trigger negative feelings such as fear, as happened to, I guess this was earlier mentioned in the book. In the casino, however, the sudden burst of dopamine is intensely pleasurable since it means that you've just won some money. Most of the time, the brain will eventually get over its astonishment. It'll figure out which events predict the reward, and the dopamine neurons will stop releasing so much of the neurotransmitter. The danger of slot machines, however, is that they are inherently unpredictable. Because they use random number generators, there are no patterns or algorithms to uncover. Even though the dopamine neurons try to make sense of the rewards, they want to know when to expect some coins in return for all those squandered quarters. They keep getting surprised. At this point, the dopamine neurons should just surrender. The slot machine is a waste of mental energy. They should stop paying attention to the surprising rewards because the appearance of the rewards will always be surprising. But this isn't what happens. Instead of getting bored by the haphazard payouts, the dopamine neurons become obsessed. When you pull the lever and get a reward, you experience a rush of pleasurable dopamine, precisely because the reward was so unexpected, because your brain cells had no idea what was about to happen. The clanging coins and flashing lights are like a surprise squirt of juice. Because the dopamine neurons can't figure out the pattern, they can't adapt to the pattern. The result is that you are transfixed by the slot machine, riveted by the fickle nature of its payouts. For Parkinson's patients on dopamine agonists as in these drugs, or whatever it is that they're on, which are called dopamine agonists, the surprising rewards of the casino trigger a massive release of chemical bliss. Their surviving dopamine neurons are so full of dopamine that the neurotransmitter spills over and pools in the empty spaces between cells. The brain is flooded with a feel-good chemical, making these games of chance excessively seductive. Such patients are so blinded by the pleasures of winning that they slowly lose everything. So in this case, Anne, who had no history of the case study that they mentioned, gambled away all of her savings, her pension plan, she sold everything she could sell, her husband left her, she continued to be addicted, only when she stopped taking the agonist, as they call it, did she stop gambling, and instantly too. The same signs that revealed the importance of emotions to making decisions, and so on. So the book continues. So basically the first few chapters of the book highlight how powerful emotions are in making decisions and how necessary they are, and so on. And so the idea of the rational decision isn't actually purely accurate. It's how you can make rational decisions emotionally rewarding and irrational decisions emotionally punishing, so that they feel bad. That's how rational decisions work. And you can actually do this through knowledge. So this knowledge can be real or fake, but for example, if you were to believe that a certain food is healthy or unhealthy, that can actually make it so that when you eat the food, it makes you feel better or worse. Because let's say you believe that burgers were very unhealthy, and then you go eat a burger, and then you feel bad and guilty while eating the burger because you know it's bad for you. This is a different kind of feel bad, and this is the kind of thing that isn't it is it does, like, the idea that you feel bad doesn't necessarily stop you from doing it. It's the point of it is that when you make good decisions, it's supposed to reward you. But if you are going to make bad decisions anyway, and you punish yourself while doing it, it just makes your already bad decisions even worse, because feeling bad is also a negative effect. Like, it makes things worse. So it's very complicated. So you can't just tie it to good or bad. The important thing is that when you eat things that you think you should eat, it actually, like, it reinforces itself and you continue to eat it. And you don't feel bad during the days you cheat, as long as you consider it a rare and random reward. It's infrequent, so you don't know how often it happens. You don't know when it's gonna happen. Occasionally you cheat and you say, this is my reward. And the point is that the act of feeling good about it and letting yourself feel good about it, what controls the action, like, how you feel about something is a directly affects the measurement of how good it actually is. And I'm not talking about physical feel good, I mean like mentally feel good. Because you can do things that you think are physically pleasurable while feeling guilty about it, like playing video games. Like, if you play video games just feeling guilty about not being productive, it ruins your video game experience. Like, you're not actually enjoying yourself while playing the video game, so it doesn't actually work. It's just depressing. Whereas if you're just playing the game and you're very focused on it, just trying to win or whatever, then you're actually the point of playing the video game actually manifests. So the point is, basically what I'm saying is, what you do it's not about making all the right decisions. It's not about doing all the right things. Like, it's not about never playing video games. It's about what you do, when you do it, actually do it, right? Like, and do it with good framing. If you view it as something that you decided to do, and you commit to doing it, it doesn't have to be a long time. Maybe you set it for 30 minutes, or you say, well, I'll eat a burger once a month. That's, if I eat a burger once a month, it's whatever. Then, or like, if you just frame it as something you decided to do, and you follow through, like, you just go in and say, I'm doing it now. I'm gonna make the most of my decision. Then life is fine. You don't have to do all the right things, but you have everything that you do decide to do actually make it work. The original quote is, it's not about making good decisions. It's not about making all the right decisions. It's about making the decisions right. Which is actually the same pattern as the relationships. If you decide to go out with someone, commit to the relationship, and see how you can make it the best relationship you can do. And if it fails, well, not you take it as lessons. You still, it was an experience. It wasn't just because it wasn't what you maybe expected it to be. It was what it was, and you had it. For example, maybe you've played a sport in the past that you didn't, maybe when you played, you thought that you were going to be pro. Let's just hypothetically. And if you ended up not being pro, that doesn't mean you should wish that you never played the sport. It's still an experience. And while doing it, it worked out for you. It's not like the intrinsic value of your activity in the sport is entirely tied to the result of you becoming a pro. In which case, if that is what you are doing it with the express purpose in mind, then you shouldn't be doing it. Like if you're doing a set of these things with the express purpose of a single result, a single outcome that you want it to lead to, then it's probably not something you should be doing. If you're eating burgers with the express purpose that you expect it to be this magical, I don't know. I don't even know how I can make all of your problems go away, and it doesn't, then it's, I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to say it. If you work out with the express purpose and for no other reason than because you think it will give you the perfect relationship, well, I mean, you're probably going to be disappointed, and if it's the idea that you would actually regret it if it doesn't, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. Well, I mean, I think the reason everyone should do it is for health, and you don't have to work out in the gym sense. Like, if you just do a sport or do some physical activity, it can even be VR games, as long as you do it enough to be healthy. Personally, I was kind of afraid of just like my organs failing or some shit. Like if I just got a heart attack or something, you know, I just don't want to have all of the health complications that will probably end up taking up a lot more than the amount of time I spend exercising. So, you know, stuff like that. All right.